So it's my last day at Google, and I'm here sitting at my old desk. I'm just kidding. It's not actually my old desk. Getting this job was basically the dream. I always thought I would just work at Google, coast here for the next 30 years into retirement. I think people think I left because I wanted to be an influencer or a creator, or because corporate was a soul-sucking place. I don't believe in any of those things. I never intended to be a creator. At first I was going to be an indie software as a service developer, sort of like Peter Levels if you're familiar with him. But then posting my journey kind of just took off, and I realized that to have the kind of impact that I want to have, being a creator is actually probably the best route that I have right now. And as for corporate, I don't necessarily think that corporate is all evil or anything like that. In fact, I think that joining Google was the best thing I did for myself, because I wouldn't be able to go this creator route right now at the speed that I'm going if I hadn't actually gained like this credibility, this financial runway by joining Google. But what I will say is that for me, and I think for a lot of people, corporate is a means to an end, not the end goal. That's why financial independence is such a big topic in the space of tech. That is something that I had a big problem with corporate culture, is that you have to put on a pretty restrictive mask when you're working at corporate. Kudos to people who don't care about maintaining that sort of corporate mask. But I think that in order to get to that point, you either just need to be super comfortable with yourself or feel very secure financially. And that was just one of the factors that led to me leaving. The other was that I couldn't bring myself to care about the work. It just feels weird to think that you could potentially be doing this kind of work for the next 30 years of your life. And that thought is pretty scary if you don't actually like the work. But there very much are people who are pretty happy with the job at Google. I think what provides structure for some people can feel like a cage for others, especially if the work isn't something that you find interest in. And so I think that was kind of the mismatch that led to all of like the mental issues that I had, because I had thought this whole time that if you get into a company like Google, then you're set for life. Then you essentially have beat the game, which is such a big mistake. But I don't like fault myself necessarily for falling for that, because that's just what people believe. Most people don't get into Google. I'm not saying that as a flex, just as a fact. And so people will think like, oh yeah, if you reach that stage, you already have everything that I would want. So why would you ever leave? And I think part of that sort of thinking, combined with just how good marketing is for these big tech firms, making it seem like a dream job, made this thought in my head where it's just like, I should be happy right now, so why am I not? Everything I have is a champagne problem. Everything I have is not valid. And it took a lot of work to be able to finally accept that that is a super flawed way of thinking. You can achieve all the success in the world, traditional success, but if you are achieving that success in the form of someone else's vision and not your own, that's not going to feel like success to you. That mismatch in my head did lead to me getting depressed eventually. My reasoning for trying to say these thoughts now is to try to deprogram that social conditioning that I went through in your head. You are allowed to feel the way that you do, and you are definitely not crazy for thinking that you feel like the success that you've achieved isn't aligned with you. And it was actually that thought that got me to eventually pull the plug and take the leave. And it's very crazy because I feel like even just walking through the office today, I feel this sense of lightness in me where I can finally be real, where I feel true to myself, rather than in the past where I walk through with this kind of fog and this mask on my face, in my head, even in my thoughts. But today, there was none of that. I felt like I could just fully communicate being myself. I don't know if I'm going to be able to be as successful in terms of like money and status and whatever now that I've left, but I'm growing in the ways that matter to me. And the feelings I have just visiting this office for the last time are kind of proof of that. I think one of the things that I didn't realize, which actually caused me to eventually quit, when you stay in a job, it's not free necessarily. If you're doing something that doesn't push you towards the future that you actually want, your dream life, you're paying that day as a day that you'll never get back. It's been a long time since I realized that continuing to work for Google is not going to get me to where I actually want to be. Getting in probably was a very fundamental part of going to where I want to go, and then stacking my financial runway. But past a certain point, I was staying out of comfort and fear rather than doing what's right for me. So just keep in mind that sticking to the traditional path, the default path of working a corporate job, it's not free. All of your friends are working a job. Everybody works a job, right? But you have to realize that you're still consciously making a choice to pay the cost of not doing something else every time that you wake up and go to your job. So in terms of what I'm doing next, I'll be honest, I don't really know fully what it is, but I do know that I want to build this brand that is backed by freedom, wealth, and meaning, and I want to help other people achieve it, not only by documenting my own journey, but by creating products, by sharing information and mindset and psychology and stuff like that. And there was a period of time where I was thinking the easiest way for me to claim my own independence is to help people to get into jobs like Google. It's something that a lot of people need, but it's also, I just couldn't do it. I made money from doing that by making the job offer system. The system is everything that I did step by step with actionable items. And I know that the value of that product is probably over $100, made over $500 on that in under a week. But I just couldn't bring myself to do this because it doesn't represent my brand, I think, to sell something like that, because I don't necessarily believe in the corporate dream anymore. That's the price that I'm paying to build a brand that is actually authentic, because I am leaving Google for the sake of living an aligned life. If I build a life that's misaligned for the sake of money, I'm essentially repeating my past mistake. You can't really argue with your feelings or emotions. You can change your beliefs and stuff, but all I know is that when I was selling the job offer system, it didn't feel right to me. I would rather have people be able to have that resource for free, to be able to find their job, to come to the realization that I have, rather than selling it with the intents of it being a dream. I think that's kind of like the system that I'm trying to build, help you get into the job through these products that are relics of my past. And then now I want to build something in order to help you get out. Everybody needs to be educated on finances. It's fundamental in modern society to understand how your finances work. Finances are basically equivalent to food and water. You exchange it for these basic necessities, right? And so if I could talk to my past version of myself, the one who was endlessly ruminating on whether I should quit Google or not, I can't tell you whether it's the right decision. It's like the Matrix, where is Neo the one because he's the one, or is he the one because he chooses to be it? God only knows if you're making the right choice. But I can tell you from my experience that no, it doesn't get easier. No, you're probably going to work actually way more than you do at your corporate job. But my life became so much more real. I feel so much more genuine. Even just today, I can tell you from walking through the office, from talking to my coworkers, from even sitting down and talking to you right now, that my life feels so much more genuine. Even though I'm making very little money, I have the freedom to go to Japan tomorrow. I have the freedom to work on products that I enjoy working on. I have the freedom to create content that I like to create. For where I'm at financially, where I'm at as a person, the benefits far outweigh the costs. And I can tell you that with 100% certainty. And so the way I see it, it's like a scale where you have the weight of the decision on this side, and then you have conviction on this side, plus your practical ability. So you have like the amount of money you can make here, and you also have your level of conviction. Then you have the decision whether you walk or not. And so if you have enough conviction and you have enough practical skills, then you can tip the scale such that the decision becomes obvious. When it's more balanced, that's when it's difficult. That's where I sat at for probably over a year, really. And it was only recently that the conviction went way up, and that's how I was able to make my decision. I don't know, something to think about if you're thinking about quitting as well. I can't tell you whether it's the right choice or not, but I will be continuing to document my journey. I'll give you more evidence of my story. That's what I'll be doing in these coming days as I travel across Asia, as I build a business, as I create more content. I'll be transparent about how I'm making money, how I'm feeling about everything, things that I'm learning about how to make money online, living a life of freedom, wealth, and meaning. So Google was a fundamental part of my life. Now it's just going to be one of the many chapters. See you in the next one.